No, we won't go home. Fighting where we stood during anti-police struggles in Ferguson, Missouri. These are some stories from a few anarchists who participated in the anti-police struggles in Ferguson, Missouri that started in mid-August 2014 and still continue today. We want to recognize that the events that happened in Ferguson, Missouri began, first and foremost, with the tragic and brutal death of yet another young black man at the hands of the police. We are not intending to glorify rioting for the sake of rioting. We instead advocate it as a legitimate means of struggle and document our stories participating in a beautiful resistance. A resistance born out of moments when people finally had enough. Furthermore, we acknowledge that white power is very obviously alive and well in America, and that black people have been habitually killed and criminalized by this system since its very beginnings. What you are holding in your hand is unfinished, a work in progress, rough around the edges. The writing itself is not complete. There is still much to be recorded, acts which provoke thought and thoughts which move one to act. The ideas that animate the writing are still in formation. They are formed by experience, refined by discussion, and only then can they be put down on paper. The subject of the writing, rebellion, the surge of bodies in revolt through the streets of our city, life itself, is not over. Memory. Night 1, Saturday, August 9th. Fear, anger, grief, bloodstains on the center stripe. Black Panthers with berets and t-shirts about genocide, slavery. Does the man with the bulletproof vest really think he's going to need it? No megaphones or stages yet, just voices talking about race in America, poverty and police. The smell of sweat and alcohol. A lone man trying to get everyone to march to the police station. The first moment of a personal strategy for how to deal with tensions written on my white skin. Where there is movement, I will move. I will walk, yell, stand, throw, run, and fight with the people at the front. I will be a validation of their anger and the ways that they choose to express it. I'll back them up. I'll walk with you, man. Visions of Oakland, Seattle, Albuquerque, LA, but there's only 15 of us willing to walk the silent 2-mile stretch to downtown Ferguson. We do our best writing, "Fuck the police," and "kill cops" as we go. Everyone smiles and laughs at the white people who hate the cops too. A family with babies, a dad so angry he drove his little ones from another part of the county into what was and would become a war zone. As the night drags on, the politicians arrive. OBS, NOI, NBPP, UAPO, alphabet soup. They're trying, with little success, to grab the attention of a relatively small crowd. Instead of joining us as we face the police station, they face us trying to tell everyone how we need to act, what needs to happen next, who will be involved in a futile and meaningless negotiation, as if those of us on either side of the line that is being drawn have anything to say to those on the other. Except maybe, "Fuck you, go die." Day 2, Sunday, August 10th. We arrive to a crowd filling the street, blocking traffic, shutting it down. An abrupt shift from the fear of imminent death that held sway the night before. The atmosphere is open, reminiscent of the early days of Occupy. Black faces instead of white talking about the Illuminati, the Federal Reserve and the gold standard. Wingnuts spouting off about conspiracy theories. A Black Panther chant led by the Panthers is shouted down by an angry black man saying, "That's not what this is about." Hard to say what he thinks it is about, or to have a conversation about why black power might not be intimidating to me as a white person, or why it nevertheless might not make the best slogan for a contemporary movement attempting to take on entrenched power structures like the police. Enter Charles Dooley, Black County Executive. Immediately he's surrounded. "Go back to Clayton with the other rich people. We don't want you, Dooley." Enter nameless black preacher who like a fool parks at the police station. "Here comes the second wave of bullshit. Take that Jesus shit back to church." How to make decisions. How to debate a strategy and enact it. Good ideas, like blocking the business strip or marching up and down the street so the cops have to block off more of it, are tossed around but no one moves en masse. A few trickle off here and there until the energy is dropped. Night 2, Sunday, August 10th. Walking down the street, I fantasize that everyone else is walking to the same place I am, with the same determination and resolve. In my daydream, everyone around me is a potential friend, an accomplice. This time, it turns out, I'm not dreaming. Canfield and West Florissant. 300 people milling about in the middle of a 5-lane intersection. Abruptly, All heads turn in the same direction. 300 more. No, 500. No, 1,000 people streaming down Canfield from the apartment complex. Get out of the way! I move to the side as bodies filled with rage and momentum stream past and head directly toward the police line at the southern end of this ghetto shopping district. Little Boozy's anthem will be the theme song for the next 9 days and nights of defiance, blaring from a car parked in the middle of a swirling crowd. A sound system at the front lines where angry young people throw rocks at the cops, setting it all off. A line of cars with ladies dancing on the roofs in front of tanks. German shepherds and police snipers are wearing balaclavas. As a chant in the streets, a way to find the rowdy crowd among the preachers and peace police. At first, the cops are caught off guard. Who knew a candlelight vigil could be so audacious, so confrontational? We envelop them in their cars. Even with their guns and their laws, they are powerless. Our weapons are bottles, rocks, middle fingers, fists, bricks, spit and kicks. One person, a young child, an old man, stands in front of the car keeping it from driving away while everyone else takes out a lifetime of abuse on the metal frames and glass windows of their cruisers. I'm here, ain't I? Quick, mask up, get in a kick. If you're going to be here, be ready, participate. Arm yourself. Let the cops know that having the same skin color doesn't put you on the same side. The last police car speeds away and everyone around me is smiling, laughing, jumping, hugging, cheering. Fists in the air. Power. Suddenly we're running, but not far. A Quick Trip employee doubled over. What are you still doing in there? I know they don't pay you that well. At first I'm hesitant, not wanting to get caught up in a stampede, not wanting to get caught on camera despite the t-shirt wrapped around my head. Tentative, I linger outside. Back up, man! Bricks fly, ricochet off glass and into looters as they flee the scene. Then someone gets it right and the panes shatter one by one. A pallet of water bottles, I grab a case and hand them out. It's August after all. There's more where that came from. Everyone is eager for a first drink, as looted beer and packs of smokes are passed around. Might as well, even though it tastes like shit. Come to think of it, I don't actually want any of this crap, but that's not really the point, is it? Some have started to work on the cash register as lottery tickets rain down from the sky and celebratory shots are fired into the air. Are they taking an aim at God, or just sending a warning shot to the cops? Either way, it's a little too close for comfort. Fear is still with me, but it's not in control. Next, it's Sam's Meat Market, the beauty shops, Red's Barbecue. Someone has a go at the Liberty Tax Prep Office while others are trying to get into the storage units across the street. Dumpsters are being set on fire as cars speed wildly up and down the strip. Youths with masked faces leaning out the windows, showing off their looted bottles, flipping off the police helicopter. They look like they on the purge. A woman stops me. I'm covered head to toe with dark clothes, gloves, a mask covers my face. Y'all look real suspicious. What you mean, the mask? I'm not trying to get caught on camera. You know they can look at you anytime they want to. There's cameras everywhere, on your computer, on the streets. Yeah, sure, but when you're breaking the law, it's best not to get recorded. All right, that's what's up. You think we're taking it too far out here? Nah, none of what's happening out here is taking it too far. They took a human life. All this is just things getting broken. They can fix all that. Nobody can bring back that boy. Y'all be safe out there. Walking back towards the QT. Hey, can you get me some Rillos? A group of young women peer around the corner at the gas station being emptied of its contents. Nah, but you can. They're free tonight. We don't got a mask though. You got another one? Here, it's easy. Just take the t-shirt and put your head through the neck hole, like you're going to put it on. Then turn it into a hood and tie the sleeves behind your head. After 2.5 hours, the looting has spread to within 50 yards of the southern police line, and backup has arrived in sufficient quantities to begin clearing the strip. The stationary phalanx has started to move, and everyone is running away back into the neighborhood. We hear a rumor that the Foot Locker on the other side of the cops is being hit up, but then we see it. Plumes of black smoke and an orange glow on the horizon. New kicks or a glimpse of a structural fire. Like moths, we are drawn towards the flames. The smoke's so thick down there you can't even breathe. Armored personnel carriers block access to the fire, shining powerfully bright lights in our direction. Back the other way. Maybe we can still get some shoes to replace the ones falling apart on our feet. A man runs out of the woods, coming from where we're headed. It's over. Foot Locker's done. The cops showed up. They locking people up. He warns a few more behind us and then, loaded down with shoeboxes, dips into his house. A young kid on a bike rolls up as we walk back to the car. Hey, y'all Black Bloc? Yeah, sort of. Me too. I'm one of those how do you say it? Anarchists? Yeah, that's me. Black Bloc's not a group you belong to. It's just a way to stay safe in the streets. When everybody wears the same color and covers their face, it makes it harder for the cops to arrest you. Cool. Why y'all out here? 'Cause we're pissed about what happened. Isn't that why everyone's out here? Yeah. But I could get some free shit too. As we head back home, cop cars are still racing in from distant jurisdictions. I roll the window down and let the night air blow through my hair, knowing that this moment will never be erased. No matter what happens tomorrow and the coming months, they'll never be able to take this away from us. Tonight was the night that we all, together, felt and enacted our power, and it was infinitely beautiful. This is where time begins to break down. Images repeat, soundtracks loop, days fade into each other, and the word routine loses all meaning. We park at a fast food joint and get out of the car. Immediately we're approached by a young black man. I saw y'all gang up. We gonna go hit up the sports store down the way. You coming? You gonna drive there? What about the cameras? We don't care about that. We not from here, we from the east side. We consider it for a moment. How often does a random kid from East St. Louis ask a bunch of strangers to go do a smash and grab? Does the fact that this will probably never happen again in our lives outweigh the fact that this is quite possibly the sketchiest idea ever? We walk down West Florissant towards a few scattered people in the street and a strong line of riot cops backed up by 3 armored vehicles blinding us with spotlights. I notice the police are using cameras for the first time. The faint smell of tear gas wafts through the air. An older man approaches and strikes up a conversation. I live in this neighborhood, and they're telling me to go home. This is my home. They need to go home. I work in a plant down the way. I told all the men at the plant to walk out with me, but they all stayed in. I was out for Trevon. I'm out tonight, and I'm going to be out tomorrow. We're looking for a way to get around the police line. Maybe there's a bigger crowd on the southern edge. Excuse me, can we cut through your yard? Y'all trying to get around them? Yeah, come on. We'll show you the way. 2 strangers lead our little group of friends through unfamiliar streets, talking along the way, encouraging us to stay safe. The route is blocked by more police, a dead end, but the gesture is meaningful, almost surreal. Back on West Florissant, the police fire rubber bullets any time we get too close. I look around for something to throw. This place could use some more rocks. You want to throw some rocks? Here, we got some. What we need are some of those Molotov cocktails. Yeah, that's what we need out here. We hide behind a line of trees and throw stones at the police, making sure to keep out of the spotlights and away from the rubber bullets. It's almost a game like when children in Palestine take on Israeli tanks with slings. But it's more than that too. An army has come to occupy this neighborhood, and no one is prepared to let that happen without some defiance, some resistance, no matter how small or tactically ineffective it may be. The police have started to blame organized white anarchists for instigating the mayhem on Sunday night. Others on Twitter and Facebook are following their lead, unwittingly playing into the new police disinformation strategy of our era, the anarchist as outside agitator. As we drive in, a large crowd is headed away from Ground Zero, the burnt-out gas station which has newly been named Mike Brown Plaza. We park and decide to go where the crowd is, a rally at a local black church. Al Sharpton presiding, Nation of Islam running security. The mood is tense, given the previous nights of rioting, police attacks, and arrests. But hundreds of people are here, lining the sidewalks and the median. The street is full of cars. The incessant honking is overwhelming. I'm facing the street trying to work up the courage to strike up a conversation. Then from behind, a commotion. I see my friend being chased away by a stream of people. I try to intercede. What's going on? What are you doing? Immediately I'm surrounded. Large men are standing close all around me. Get out of here. This is black space. If you're an anarchist, you need to leave. We don't want that anarchist shit here. This is the most important part of my entire life. They're gonna have to kill me to keep me away. No, I'm staying. A slender black arm reaches across my chest and pulls me out of the crowd. "No, we want him here," she yells. "Him being here proves this ain't about black versus white." Another man approaches, wants to get his picture taken with me. "Come here, get in this picture," he yells to his friend. We hold hands like in a poster for racial unity. Another arm around my back. What was that about? No one seems to have the answer. I'm shaken. I don't want to leave. I want to stay with these people who just rescued me, who value my presence, who in this moment I feel closer to than my own brother. But I can't help feeling like an outsider, like I no longer belong. I feel small. What the hell am I doing here? We march up and down the street for a while. The cops are nowhere in sight, their hands tied by the violence of the nights before and the sanctity of a black church. Once again I am overcome by the sheer number of people, by the momentousness of what is unfolding around me, and the improbability that I am actually here to see it, to participate, to make some small contribution. This is amazing. Sleep comes in fits. I lie awake running through all of the events of the day in my mind. Without any noticeable change, I'm sleeping. But my brain is still processing images. Sleep is stressful. I wake up without feeling rested, as if I'd stayed awake all night thinking. My chest is tight and stays that way all day. The only thing that makes the anxiety I'm holding in my ribcage go away is being on the streets surrounded by people who are just as angry, angrier than myself. With every bone in my body, I ache to return to that atmosphere, to live within it, to be there all the time, to inhabit the exceptional. Something in my life has broken, shifted, and right now it doesn't seem like it will ever go back. At least for now, normal is impossible. Last night, people started throwing Molotovs at the police. This morning, Obama is talking about Ferguson and the governor has stepped in. The state police are replacing the county police. The Justice Department is involved in investigating the murder. Looks like we lit a fire under their asses. Would this response from the highest levels of government have happened anyway? Or is this new attention a response to escalation on the streets? Did they realize that they were on the verge of something much more serious? Did we actually manage to scare them, or does it just take a war on the streets to force their hand? Where is the line between winning concessions and provoking lethal force, or is it true enough to say that they are just two sides of the same coin? Today the police have pulled back. They're still there just around the corner, hiding behind the thin veneer of social peace, ready to jump into action at a moment's notice. But they're not attacking us tonight. They retreated, strategically, but it was the fierceness of our fight and the threat of more to come that made them pull out. I've outrun and evaded the police before, but I've never seen them fall back. I've never been a part of something so powerful. I've never been a part of something powerful enough to bind their hands. At least not until now. It feels like everyone else is experiencing this small victory with me for the first time as well. West Florissant is a parade ground. A victory parade. All that's missing are the streamers and confetti. There's 1,000 people on the street tonight, and 1,000 more passing through in their cars. Everyone must be feeling good. I'm back at the church, and a large black man in fatigues motions for me to come talk to him. I saw you here the other night, and I meant to pull you aside. Yeah, that was crazy. What was all that about? If there's a problem, I hope we can talk it out. I don't even know. That's not what I'm about. I'm on some anti-government shit. I was one of them chasing your friend away. I didn't want to see no respect to the Brown family, but I guess I just got caught up in it. Yeah, me too. I seen you out here, and I just want to let you know where I'm at. I got gas masks in my car. I'm ready for whatever. I've been in touch with my militia brothers. They say they can have boots on the ground tomorrow. Damn. Alright. Holy fuck. This shit is way over my head. Is this a trap? Is this guy for real? Be safe out here. You too. I'll see you around. Later that night, we see the guy who led the charge against my friend. That wasn't the time or place to say something. When I realized who y'all were, I thought about it and I realized we're pretty much on the same page. Whatever differences we have, I'm sure we can work it out. Everything was just really tense the other night. I've been dreaming about this my whole life and I want it to last forever. But we gotta be organized and y'all are organized. Y'all are more ready than anybody. In some ways, we are more ready for this than most people. Riot police, chemical weapons, days and nights of marching, becoming anonymous when we need to, fundraising, jail support, coming prepared. In other ways, we're in the rear watching as people of all ages and genders run ahead of us. The collective strategy that is enacted directly is more intelligent and brave than anything we could come up with in one of our circular, painful meetings. The tactical common sense, the experience and theoretical lessons of history, the lack of fear, and the fire that lights a Molotov or burns down a building are all already present in this rebellious multitude. The governor has declared a curfew. No one will be allowed on the streets of Ferguson after midnight. Of course we're going, fuck their curfew. A local activist group has called for a march to defy the curfew. The rumor is that they want to march out of the boundary and then back in all together in a big crowd. Safety in numbers. Or maybe a trick to lead us all away from the coming conflict. Leaders betray. It's been drizzling for hours. If anyone had any doubts, this confirms it. God is definitely a counter-revolutionary. Black army boots in his suit with silver-starred epaulets. The national chairman of the New Black Panther Party. There is no New Black Panther Party, say former members of the Black Panther Party, is going around the crowd trying to convince everyone to go home. I will not lead my people into a meat grinder. The art of war tells us that we should choose the time and place we fight, not our enemy. Brothers, we don't have enough guns out here today to defeat the enemy. We don't have enough gas masks or medical supplies. There are women and children here. Paternalistic, patriarchal, militaristic, completely out of touch with the mood on the streets. And yet some people are buying the fearmonger's wares, slowly but surely, because of the rain or an over-exaggerated terror. The crowd is thin. The clock strikes 12. Hands up, don't shoot. We still here, what you gonna do? Nothing. Somehow there are still 200 of us left in the street. The crowd seems small, too small compared to hundreds here just hours before. The cops are keeping their distance, so what do? Close the gap. We march towards the police line, defiance that just won't quit. Scuffles, rocks and bottles thrown, and then comes the tear gas. Round after round filling the street, choking the air. I run after a spinning canister trying to catch it so I can throw it back. Someone else gets there first. Oh, that shit burns. You gotta get some gloves. I show him my leather work gloves. $2 from Home Depot. He nods his head in agreement. Appreciation. I see my friend trying to help up a stranger who has fallen. My respirator in place, I run through the clouds of gas to help him. Can you stand up? Can you walk? Here, lean on me. I put his arm around my shoulder and carry his weight. Watch my back. Watch my back, I scream to a nearby stranger as we slowly walk away from the approaching police line. I got you, keep going. We're breaking up chunks of asphalt and throwing them at tanks. Others are watching us, getting the idea, joining in. Then, for no apparent reason, a lone police cruiser, sirens blazing, comes screaming in from behind. Panic everywhere, people running, loud bang, smoke and tears filling my eyes. Where are my friends? What's happening? Still frame, a body lying on the ground. If I was in a movie right now, everything would go quiet for a second or two. The frames clicking by one at a time, blurring and out of focus. And then it would all speed up. The camera framing a shot of my closest friend, fallen, hurt, but unable to tell me what's wrong, what happened. The only sound he can muster, a haunting groan. A crowd forming around us, me yelling for everyone to get back, to give us space, my voice cracking with emotion. A short, stocky man with a high-pitched voice, his whole body shaking, gyrating, almost as if he were dancing, is screaming, "He's been shot! He's been shot!" Over and over. And then seemingly out of nowhere, a car pulls up. My friend is carried in and he's rushed to the hospital, guided there by riot angels I'll never know. I stare at the spot where he had just been. Rain mingles with small puddles of blood on the dimpled surface of the sidewalk. A police tank stops at the intersection. Fuck you, motherfuckers! As I throw the stone I've been holding. I want to hurt them, to draw the blood that was drawn from my friend. If I can't do that, I'll have to settle for letting their hell fall down on my body instead. It's nothing I haven't felt before. The sting of rubber bullets ripping into my skin, metal cuffs cutting off the blood flow to my hands, the relentless fire of pepper spray burning my face, the choking cloud of tear gas condensing in my eyes, the dull thud of a 4-foot wooden pole on my head. Give it your best shot. I can take it. I even kind of like it. Perhaps this is the moment in which I lose my fear. They won't let us all into the hospital. Gun violence protocol, protective custody. A friend is lying on the sidewalk, unable to go further. Others are walking around aimlessly in a daze. I'm talking on a cell phone to a drunken friend, trying to explain what's happened. I see him walk up, a suit and a tie, a badge on his hip. So were any of you there? Did you see what happened? Without thinking, just wanting him to leave. No one's going to talk to you, just go away. Okay, well, I hope your buddy dies up there. Shock. Did he really just say that? Get the fuck out of here. Go shoot yourself in the fucking head. We've gathered at an all-night coffee shop in the center West End. Playground for the rich. The functional city within a much larger, rotten, crumbling shell. We hold each other and sob in turns. We stare at our feet, at the starless sky. We pace up and down the block past designer spectacle shops and modernist fine dining restaurants. All I can see are shattered window panes, charred debris, twisted metal, blood, carnage, and disorder. I need to get out of here before I do something stupid, before I create another crisis my already shattered friends will have to deal with. A beer and some cigarettes, a roll of toilet paper soaked with tears and snot, friends everywhere trying to sleep on the floor. I stay up all night waiting for a call from the hospital. 5 a.m. They've stopped the bleeding. He's still in critical condition, but he's okay for now. One of the bullets is still in him, maybe in his heart, but they'll deal with that later when he's more stable. They say he should have died. Sleep. Only a few hours. My dreams won't let me relax. We can't even move. Luckily, others who have slept a little more come over and cook us food as we sit around stuck to our seats, waiting to hear more about our dear friend. Someone tells a funny story about a kid we all know. And they found him in the shed breaking all the glass bottles. Dad, we're playing Bad Pirates. So proud of his new game. Glass shards everywhere. Bare tender feet. You should have seen it, Dad. It was awesome. Glass was flying in my face and going all over the place. Laughter is the only medicine we have right now. It's a funny story, but I laugh more than I normally would. It feels good to feel something else, if only for a moment. It feels good to feel something else. After a few hours, it becomes obvious. We have to go back out there. Can't just sit around the house all day, rotting inside, letting our sadness turn into a paralyzing fear. A friend brings some candles and flowers from our garden. We head straight for the spot where he was shot. There's still some police tape tied to the fence. We rip it off and I push into the mud with my shoe. We light the candles and scatter the flowers. I sit down wondering if anyone walking by will know what happened here, in this exact place, not even 24 hours ago. I want to write something, a paint marker and some toilet paper. The only way to heal this pain is to change the world. I need to walk around, to feel the crowd surround me, to be covered once again in the warm blanket of an anger that refuses to die. I see the top cops walking around, so sure of their safety, pressing the flesh. What do they think they're doing? Hey, I just wanted you to know that no one around here likes you. You know, in case you forgot. I follow them around for a while, looking right at the center of their eyes, and then I'm screaming. Hey Johnson, let me get your kidney. I want your kidney. Calm down, son. Don't tell me to calm down. My buddy's in the hospital right now with all kinds of tubes and shit coming out of his face. He lost his kidney and his spleen. There's a bullet right up in his heart. And that's on you, motherfucker. Fuck your curfew. If you hadn't come down here with your tanks and tear gas, none of that shit would have happened. I want your fucking kidney. If he dies, you're gonna pay. Listen, I'm here to protect your right to protest peacefully. What do you think I'm doing? Just because I'm getting loud? What are you gonna do? You gonna beat me up? You gonna shoot me? Go ahead. Get the fuck out of here. Are you going to wait till someone else gets shot, till somebody else dies before you wake the fuck up? He's trying to ignore me, talking to the media, trying to appear calm and reasonable in contrast to my out-of-control raw anger. I'm going to get that kidney one way or another. They don't even touch me. They just walk away and get in their cars, sweating, stinking of fear. The governor has declared a state of emergency and called in the National Guard. Last night there was more looting. People even tried to march on the police command center with its helicopter, national media trailers, armored vehicles, and hundreds of cop cars from all around the metro area. What does that even mean? State of emergency? National Guard? Will the army be the new police? Will they have live rounds? What are the rules of engagement for this new situation? We're marching again, up and down the strip, cops blocking off either end. Stay on the sidewalk. Stay on the sidewalk. We're in the street. Stay in the right-hand lane. We've taken up both. Move back towards the sidewalk. We take over the whole street. Every passing car is simply part of the demo. If you scared, go to church. No justice, no sleep. There's a thin police line ahead, but we go right through it, and they don't lift a finger. That's how afraid they are of another confrontation, another spark. It's clear they've been ordered to stand down. We're back at the other end. This time they've made a line we won't be marching through. They don't want a replay of the night before. But wait, they've brought help. 50 preachers and liberal do-gooders, the peacekeepers, link arms and walk towards us with their backs to the police. Nonviolent resistance now means doing the job of the police for them, without weapons, of course. What happened to sitting down in the front and taking a beating? What happened to locking your neck to the doors of the jail? At least in the past, I could respect their willingness to feel pain, but this display of servility on the part of the non-violencers is just despicable. Back at Canfield, there's a crowd around 2 or 3 police tanks. The cops are all wearing fatigues, helmets, and body armor. They've got pepper ball guns, bean bags, and wooden dowel shotguns, AR-15s, tear gas launchers, sniper rifles, tasers. A woman has ripped up a "Do Not Enter" street sign and is holding it up in the middle of the street. She's all alone. Every once in a while she drops the sign and goes back into the crowd to check up on her baby. The police, through their loudspeaker, are telling us not to do everything we're doing. Even when we comply, they threaten us. If you are ripping out a street sign, you may be subject to arrest or other measures. If you are standing in the Quick Trip lot, you may be subject to arrest or other measures. If you are carrying a street sign that you have illegally removed, you may be subject to arrest or other measures. If you are standing still, you may be subject to arrest or other measures. The lone woman comes back into the street with her large metal sign. One by one, people drag out traffic cones to symbolically block the way. A few dumpster lids are propped up between them, creating a modicum of shelter from the potential of flying rubber bullets. Slowly the street fills with people. 10, 15, 20 tear gas canisters fly through the sky. They've also brought out flashbang grenades and smoke bombs. Everyone is throwing them back. Rocks are flying through the air. It's still not enough, but at least people are learning to work together, to throw in waves. An armored car approaches and we run down Canfield back to the safety of a neighborhood the police have yet to invade. Shots ring out. If you're gonna shoot, shoot straight. The tear gas is thick tonight, and we take a minute to wash our faces in the spigot of a house just down the block. Some kids next to us light a Molotov, and either out of excitement or nerves drop it in the middle of the street. You've got to run up before you throw that. Everyone is laughing, teasing the youth for his lack of experience in something we're all still novices at. Make this one count. Someone runs up to the window of a nearby building, breaks the glass, and tosses in a Molotov. The small crowd cheers to the sight of reflected flames. Someone else runs up with a bottle of gas and dumps more fuel on the fire. Some trash is added to the small fire burning in the middle of the street, with the hope that it will disperse the low-hanging clouds of gas. Another armored car speeds in and we run away, deciding that at least for tonight we've had enough. Back home, we're giddy with the knowledge that this rebellion has gone on strong for 10 days and nights. Despite the overwhelming show of military force, despite the recuperators and their longer leashes, despite the good cops in their bigger cages, the rebels on the street refuse to back down. Reflection. It is not a matter of having been there when others were not about other generations having better myths than one's own. It is all about entering into conversation with the Paris Communards and the peasants of Aragon, with Flores Magón and Rosa Luxemburg. Paco Ignacio Tebo II, 1968. Learn, act, create, transmit. Any attempt to completely and exhaustively explain the Ferguson Rebellion will undoubtedly fail. What we offer here should not therefore be understood as an attempt to rigidly define or encapsulate what happened or why it happened the way that it did. Like the thousands of people who passed through the various moments and spaces that comprise the rebellion, we each have our own thoughts, emotions, and perspectives. What follows is the result of an attempt to provoke ourselves and each other to put our individual and collective experiences into words, to contribute to a conversation larger than ourselves, to enter into communication. If in that process we only succeed in creating yet another myth, a story we tell only to ourselves, then we will have confirmed once again that we are merely human. St. Louis is an old city with many names, an old city with layers of history that can be peeled away like the skin of an onion. The homes we now inhabit were built on top of the Mound City, of a native Mississippian culture that existed here hundreds of years before Europeans ever set foot on the soil. The streets we drive down are named after French fur traders, and the neighborhoods we live in have been built, decayed, and rebuilt by centuries of human activity and migration. In the early 1800s, St. Louis was a point of departure for those traveling west to Oregon and California. The Gateway City has its place in the story of American colonization and manifest destiny. In the 1840s, German immigrants brought their beer halls and breweries, their working-class radicalism and cheap labor to pave the streets and raise the buildings of this brick city. As the second-largest U.S. port in 1850, St. Louis competed with Chicago for preeminence in Midwestern railways. And after the steamboat lost out to the train, after urban industry defeated the rural plantation economy, St. Louis was flooded with free slaves from the South. In the aftermath of World War II, the U.S. went through a dramatic transformation. In many ways, the America that people everywhere think they know was created during this time and exported to the rest of the world over the next 50 years. McDonald's, shopping malls, interstates, and suburbs. That America has always been a hollow image, an incomplete truth, a mirage sold by advertising firms. Just beneath the surface lies something much more sinister and ugly, the legacy of slavery and empire building. And yet there is also another story, a counter-narrative that is human and beautiful, that runs through it all, the legacy of resistance. The growth of St. Louis' northern suburbs was fueled by GI loans for new houses in nearby manufacturing plants, Ford at Union and Natural Bridge and Emerson Electric in Ferguson. St. Louis's first suburban shopping centers were built in Jennings to sell the dream of commercialized happiness to 50s housewives. By 1970, a patchwork of cul-de-sacs and cookie-cutter houses had filled in the space where there once were farms. All of this, the post-war prosperity, the tidy lawns, the secure employment, all of it was very white. In 1970, North County was 97% white, and Ferguson itself was 85% white. The new, mostly white, residents of North County had left the city because it was old and cramped, because there were good jobs at the new factories, because their new babies demanded new homes, but also because the city was becoming more and more black. In the 1970s, in another wave of migration, whites left the city in droves. They fled north and west for comfort, for security and safety, because they were afraid, because they were, and probably still are, racist. Bordered on the south by Interstate 70 and on the west by the Inner-Belt Expressway, in the path of planes departing or arriving at Lambert International Airport and just to the west of Ferguson, lies the municipality of Kinloch, the oldest predominantly black community in Missouri. Despite policies making it almost impossible for blacks to buy property directly from a realtor, the residents of Kinloch were able to buy homes through an exploitative process in which property was sold to white middlemen who turned around and sold it to blacks at over twice the cost. In 1938, unwilling to share control of the local school board, the whites of Kinloch formed their own municipality, Berkeley, out of the northern half of Kinloch. At that time, Ferguson and Berkeley were sundown towns, where blacks were not allowed to live or even be present after nightfall. The 1980s and 90s saw yet another wave of regional migration as whites left the northern suburbs for neighborhoods and communities even further away. North County, an area that was once predominantly white, had become almost 70% black by 2000. And while the suburbs have increasingly become the centers of poverty in America, the people moving to North County in the last 30 years have been, for the most part, college-educated homeowners looking for a way out of the impoverished and racially segregated inner city. During this time, the population of St. Louis City dropped by 1/3, while the population of St. Louis County nearly tripled. The population center of the St. Louis metro area is now over 20 miles from downtown, and the main destination of this more recent wave of migration, St. Charles County, is now Missouri's wealthiest county per capita. Where the white people go, the money flows. In the 1950s, West Florissant Avenue was the main corridor along which the northern suburbs developed, housing tracts on either side of a commercial strip. In the 70s, West Florissant was the line along which whites fled the inner ring. In the ensuing economic decline, the stretch of the street which runs through Ferguson became home to liquor stores disguised as grocers, beauty shops full of weaves, a McDonald's, and a Quick Trip. The events which unfolded in Ferguson and throughout the St. Louis metropolitan area in the late summer and fall of 2014 can be partially understood as the latest manifestation of a global cycle of struggles initially set off by the 2008 financial crisis and the consequential effects on the global economy. In the case of the Ferguson Rebellion, much of the anger and resentment which led to the rioting and street fighting was provoked by institutionalized racism and racialized poverty. By placing the rebellion in a global context, by also discussing class relations in the economy, we are not attempting to ignore or subsume the racial aspects of the answer to the question, why? Rather, we are making an attempt to understand the reasons behind the questions, why here, and why now? What began as a collapse of housing and speculative markets in 2008 was deftly transformed into a restructuring of the socioeconomic hierarchy by 2009. Faced with the threat of losing vast sums of wealth, the only way for those at the very top of the pyramid to maintain their positions of privilege and prestige was to pass on the bill to those below them through foreclosure and austerity. The middle-class American dream of home ownership and a college education was, for many people, turned into the nightmare of inescapable poverty and debt. Instead of forgiving those debts and taking steps to ensure that everyone has a reasonably comfortable place to live and enough food to eat, politicians everywhere gave the very people responsible for this crisis a big fat check. Estimates of the cost of the U.S. government bailout of Wall Street run into the trillions of dollars. In fact, no one really knows the actual price tag. If you're exceedingly rich and you get into a bind, the government will bail you out. If you're poor, you'll end up on the street. The local epicenter of the foreclosure crisis, which peaked in 2009, was none other than North County. Between 2000 and 2006, the costs associated with home ownership increased by 30% in North County, due to predatory high-interest lending. In the same time period, the number of subprime loans for home purchases or refinancing more than doubled. In 2004, a corresponding dramatic rise in the volume of home sales and pricing signified the creation of an inflated housing market bubble and foreshadowed the coming crash. When families with moderate incomes were no longer able to pay the outrageous interest rates on their high-risk loans, the bubble burst and foreclosure became the new normal. Between 2004 and 2008, there were over 3,000 foreclosures in North County, with an annual rate stabilized at around 800 by 2009. Of course, the super wealthy also had to cut loose some sacrificial deadweight, Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, and to eventually pay a price for their misdeeds, though no amount of fines could ever make up for the countless evictions, hungry bellies, and stolen lives brought on by such reckless greed. In short, since 2008, the uber-rich have solidified their positions by throwing everyone else under the bus. Now, in 2014, all the talking heads are chattering about income inequality and wealth disparity as if they were forces of nature, with some even going so far as to fear for their safety and the sanctity of their social position. While the federal government reports job growth, a slowly expanding economy, and gradual recovery from the Great Recession, the reality of day-to-day life for most of us is not so rosy. In fact, for some people, the 2008 financial crisis didn't really change much of anything. The poor were poor before, and they're still poor now. It's just that nowadays, there are more poor people, experiencing a much harsher reality and in contrast to pinnacles of wealth never seen before. What does that look like in a day-to-day sense? Over the last 6 years, thousands of people have lost their homes and their jobs. Consequently, there are more people living on the streets, turning to crime in order to survive, looking for a way to escape through drugs or alcohol, encountering an overworked and underfunded police force, and getting caught up in the courts and prisons. The FBI estimates that in 2012, over 400 people were killed by law enforcement officers. Is it any wonder, then, that the last 6 years have also seen homeless people forming illegal squatted tent communities, collective and individual resistance to foreclosures and evictions, hunger strikes and work stoppages sweeping through overcrowded prisons, a thoroughly generalized public occupation and protest movement, Occupy, and a wave of anti-police rebellions that have touched off in cities from coast to coast. The Ferguson Rebellion is the latest moment in this half-decade of struggles. That it is also one of the most massive, forceful, and emotionally loaded instances of revolt, at least in this part of the world, is significant, though exactly what it signifies can only be determined by the unfolding events to come. Situating the Ferguson Rebellion in the context of 2008 financial crisis, and leaving it at that would be far too simplistic. One cannot ignore the relationship of race and class in America, a relationship that stretches back to before there even was a United States of America, or a social system called capitalism. The privileges of whiteness were at that time a conscious strategy used by the colonial landlords to circumvent a cross-racial revolt which threatened to strip them of all their wealth and power, as well as a means to justify nascent imperialist and genocidal aspirations. Following the Poquet War of 1636 and King Philip's War of 1676, Puritans in Massachusetts attempted to justify their wars of extermination in biblical terms of good versus evil and light versus darkness, projecting this imagery onto the dark-skinned enemies of their mission in the wilderness. In Virginia, after enslaved blacks and white indentured servants rose up together in Bacon's Rebellion in 1676, the white landowning class cemented a racial ideology and set of practices which favored poor whites at the expense of blacks. The consequences of this repressive maneuver, and the fact that most poor and working whites have taken the bait over and over again throughout the ensuing centuries, have led to the situation that we find ourselves in today, over 300 years later. A situation in which narratives around race, class, and empire are inseparable. Racialized poverty is so entrenched in our society that one can't really speak about poverty in America without also speaking about race. While it is certainly true that there are still poor whites, that exploitation and misery occur at many levels throughout society, even in the so-called middle class, and that a small minority of black and brown people have escaped poverty by climbing on the backs of those beneath them, race is still an important factor in determining the outcome of most Americans' lives. Does all or any of that mean that the rebellion in Ferguson was a purely racial experience? That race is the only social force at play? No. But it also doesn't mean that it is not about race, which is also very different from saying it is not about black versus white. There was and is still room for whites who experience poverty and dispossession, police harassment and brutality, or who can at least empathize with that experience, to side with blacks who also share those experiences, though often in different contexts. And while rebellion is always a decision that one makes, to fight back or to stay complacent, the degree to which it is felt as a choice or as a necessity may just be different for those of us who are white than it is for those of us who are black. If whiteness is defined as a collaborationist social category assigned to some of us in order to separate our interests from non-whites, from all those who are other, then whiteness is not simply a static definition of who we are. It is also informed by our actions and the choices we make. Another way of putting this would be to say that it is possible to have pale skin or be of European descent and to identify with other oppressed and exploited people instead of with other white people. While this attitude does not erase the real differences in how we are perceived and treated by the power structure, it may be a necessary first step for overcoming the racial divide. If treason to whiteness is a positive ethic of whites in America, we still have to grapple with the complicated problem of how to meet as equals. People are, generally speaking, socialized through school and the family to fill certain roles in society. That socialization gears some towards self-confidence, provides opportunity and gives access to the language used in the corridors of power, while others are prepared for service or superfluity and given an entirely different self-image and language to speak. Some of the conscience wringing that surrounds the discourse around racial privilege is based on the assumption that those without privilege should be brought into the world of the privileged. Universities, politics, corporate hierarchies, gated communities, etc. If the problem is that people of color need more access to these social institutions, then of course there will be inequalities of knowledge and experience that would need to be leveled out in order to make this possible. But such a reshuffling of the deck could only ever be piecemeal, and would do nothing to eradicate the underlying problems of privilege and exclusion. It would only give them a slightly different color. If the problem is not how to enter the institutions that uphold inequalities of wealth and power, but rather how to abolish them altogether, then meeting on the streets as accomplices in the act of rebellion is a significant step towards equality. If the language we are speaking is composed not with academic treatises or eloquent speeches, but rather with bricks, Molotovs, first aid supplies, and thrown back tear gas canisters, it is much easier to speak on an equal footing. However, rioting and street battles with the cops clearly aren't enough. We also need something else, something more. Other ways of speaking and acting if we're really going to change this world we live in. Exactly what that something is, we don't know. And maybe the only way to find it, if it can be found, is to continue searching, moving, communicating. The most immediate and influential reference point for the rebellion in Ferguson is the Trayvon Martin case and the resulting wave of protests which occurred both nationally and locally. Some of the same people who participated in a confrontational demonstration, or mini-riot, in downtown St. Louis on July 14, 2013, were present on the streets of Ferguson just over a year later. Some wore t-shirts in remembrance of Trayvon, while they protested the murder of Mike Brown. While it is probably impossible to fully understand how different moments of rebellion and resistance enter the collective imagination, propel people to rebel, and influence their understanding of their activity, a plethora of evidence exists which demonstrates the effects of historic and contemporary conflagrations on our present moment. From homemade signs referencing a Black Fall to shouted allusions to the Rodney King riots of 1992, from NWA to Little Boozy, from the Oakland Oscar Grant Rebellion of 2009 to Occupy and the obsession with provocateurs, from the Civil Rights Movement to Black Power and the movement of riots in the 1960s and 70s. Certainly the epidemic of mass incarceration, racial profiling, and police shootings has been present in the minds of both the uncontrollable rebels and the politicized protesters. This, but also a swirling vortex of experiences, histories, representations, and images from which people draw, adopting that which resonates and abandoning that which does not. Hence, the younger generation of protesters wearing t-shirts and masks, screaming about their determination to smash institutionalized racism, while leading other protesters to a nonviolent and symbolic sit-in or direct action. The rioting, the defiance to militarized police occupation, the protesting and civil disobedience has all been full of contradictory and conflicting impulses. So many people with so many different thoughts and ideas have been present that it is impossible to speak of a unified mass. Sometimes this dynamic can even be seen on a personal level, as individuals are pushed and pulled in different directions by the unfolding events, as if the very ground beneath them were constantly shifting. This fluidity is perhaps most observable in the youngest among the rebels, who have yet to solidify their perspectives into a rigid political dogma. Among the body of rioters, those engaging in looting, property destruction, street fighting, and defiance to police commands, there is some sense of the unity of our purpose. When the police kill, rebellion is our response. While the trajectories from which we reached that conclusion may be varied, the fact that thousands of us reached it at the same time in the same place is what made the Ferguson Rebellion what it was. In the words of State Police Commander Ron Johnson, people thought a revolution was happening and they wanted to be part of it. Where journalists, politicians, and concerned citizens see only senseless violence and pure opportunism, we see a willingness and desire to fight back against an oppressive system of institutionalized racism in any and every way possible. That this fight back also includes moments of joy and elation should be no surprise despite the tragically serious nature of its causes. The artificial scarcity of the marketplace, which leaves one always wanting more, is broken down through the act of looting and replaced by freely shared abundance. The powerlessness and humiliation of police harassment is turned on its head when, through acts of defiance to police authority, rioters expose their own collective power. This overturning of normalized power relations turns pain and tears into smiles and laughter. In that sense, it is at least a powerful way to mourn.